Hello, this is going to be a brief video on how to fill in a lesson plan. It's part one because I'm only going to do the basics. I'll do another one in the future on the more complex sides of lesson planning. I'm hoping this will be especially useful for people trying to put together a lesson plan for a microteach. So basically, we've got a lesson plan template. There are lots of different types of lesson plan templates. You may be given one by your organisation, or you may be allowed to choose. You can just look online and find lots of different types. This is a style which has elements which are common to quite a few other session plan / lesson plans. They're the same thing. It's just some people call them one, some people call them the other. So basically we have our title, and in this particular case this microteach short one is going to be on how to make a paper aeroplane. Venue is going to be the location, so it might be room 12 or it might be a particular building or name of something. Here we got the time, so I've got the start time and the end time. This is just a 30-minute microteach, and I got the tutor name. I've been a bit unoriginal there, but there we go. So this little section, aim and learning objective or objectives, it's quite common on a lot of lesson plan templates. So my aim in this particular case is to construct or make a paper aeroplane. Because it's a microteach, your aim on other lesson plans will quite often come from the module specification, or the particular qualification. So then what I'm going to do is I now need to think, how can I deliver that in just half an hour? And that's where I have to then break this aim down into learning outcomes. And in this particular case, I've just got two, and they're quite simple. I've got recognise the key steps to making a paper aeroplane, and I've got construct a paper aeroplane. Now, the important thing about your learning outcomes, if you have a look at your Bloom's or your Solo taxonomy, is that they're measurable. And in this case, they're going up the domains. This is a lower order, and then this is a higher order when they actually physically do it. Obviously, you can't really make a paper aeroplane or construct it if they don't know the key steps of making it. So I've chosen those two because I think I can deliver those in half an hour, and they will achieve this aim. So that means my learning outcomes are constructively aligned to my aim. Right, now it depends upon your placement or location. You may or may not have it laid out by this, but there's obviously an important element is to put in essential skills, and also to put in ESDGC, environmental sustainable development, global citizenship. And if you're in Wales, there's also Welsh and Welsh culture. So on this particular case, I've already noted it's going to be sustainability paper, and I've got essential skills, reading for information. I'll show you where those are in a minute or two. This particular site, where this microteach will be, has a full health and safety risk assessment, which is available on site. It's always good practice for tutors to make a visual inspection of the classroom, looking for rubbish, cables, broken chairs, damaged tables, and just to make it safe for the learners. And this one, because I intend to launch the paper aeroplanes, we just need to be aware of eyes, so I've made an extra note to take care when positioning the learners prior to throwing or launching the planes. Opportunities for extracurricular activities. That's not really relevant for microteach, but in this particular case I intend to give them an instruction resource that they can take home and use to make more advanced or different types of aeroplanes. This is a lot more complex than we need to necessarily go through in a microteach, and it will depend upon your group and any issues that you have. So I'm just going to do some of the samples. So dyslexia and literacy issues and visual issues such as Erling syndrome or visual stress are very common. So I'm just going to use what we call a universal design for learning, where I'm going to, instead of using white paper, I'm going to use pale blue paper, and I'm going to also include visual images along with text, and that helps dyslexic learners, or may help dyslexic learners. And I've also got my PowerPoint slides will have a pale blue background, which helps support visual stress. Both of these won't harm other people, so I can just install those as a standard operating procedure. I've just made a note here under emotional, but I'm going to look at differentiation in this particular case by tutor support and the use of MKOs if discovered in the introduction. MKOs being more knowledgeable others. You'll find that in your Vygotsky. Right, now I'm expecting I might have a learner who has hearing difficulties, so I've made some methods of how I'm going to cater for that. So I'm going to use a video clip, and this one that I found actually has subtitles. I'm also going to provide instruction resource to provide written instructions to support the audio and my explanations, and I'm also going to make sure that I am clearly visible to that particular learner. Right, into the lesson plan itself. Now obviously this is going to be short. This one gives me time, that's time per element. My lesson aims, that's where I'm going to link to the lesson aims that we've talked about. Any differentiated learning outcomes, teaching activity, learner activity, assessment for and of learning, cross-cutting themes, embedding, and my resources. Now in this particular case, I also like to include a pre-session box, but that's just because I'm disorganized. And this helps me prepare and know that I'm okay. Now that's very good on a very short session if you've got time, because it's really hard to, 30 minutes goes very quickly. So in this particular case, I'm going to prepare all my resources to enable quick deployment in the session, and I'm going to check the IT is working. There's nothing worse than fumbling over IT in a PowerPoint, in a microteach, especially, you know, if you're using your PowerPoint. So then we really get on to the start of the session, and my one has these shaded just so I can see start and end. So start tends to be the recap of previous learning or the introduction. So in this section, I'm going to introduce the learning aims and outcomes, which we had back up there, and I'm going to assess prior learning. Obviously, I don't know how many people can make paper aeroplanes, so I need to find that out. There's no point teaching something that people know. Luckily, I've checked beforehand, and some haven't, some haven't. So, but it's always a good idea, assess prior learning. Now that is, you know, your initial or your diagnostic assessment. So then I'm making a note here that I'm not going to use formal differentiated learning outcomes. It's a little bit tricky to do all of those in a short micro-teach, and my learning outcomes are quite acceptable across different ability levels. Okay, so and doing that, I'm going to be taking the lead as a tutor because it's a tutor explanation lead. So I'm saying something, the learners are listening, so at this point they are passive. We've got them together as a whole group, and their part in this will be to ask questions if they don't understand anything. The important thing is, how do I know that they understand the learning outcomes and aims? So I need to think of how I'm going to assess that for learning, and I'm going to use questioning. I'm going to check through questioning them, are those aims and objectives understood? If not, then I have to re-explain them. I'm also going to use a PowerPoint, so they'll be visual and up on the screen so people can see them. Right, then I'm going to go into my main section, and I'm going to have a teaching activity to explain the key features of making a paper aeroplane, and I'm going to use a video clip and refer to the instruction resource that I've made. The instruction resource is pictures of the steps and the instructions along it. So at this point the learners will be passive because they're listening to me. They're still in the whole group, but they can ask questions. During how I'm going to assess them, well, I can observe them during the video to see whether or not it's being watched, whether they're paying attention, and then afterwards I can use questioning to check that they understand these key features, because if they don't understand the key features, we have to go back and redo it. During this, I'm going to embed my ESDGC by looking at paper, and should I be using paper as a resource, the damage to the environment, trees, etc. In this particular case, I think it's valid. And I'm also going to, because I've got an instruction template of what to do, I've got them reading for information, so I'm putting in some literacy in here as well. And the resources I'm going to use for this, instruction resource and the YouTube clip. Now it's always a good idea to put the hyperlink in there, just in case you forget it. Now then, there's no differentiated learning outcomes in this particular case, so I just put none in there. And now, lesson aims, what am I actually working to? Well, this is the one I'm looking at. Recognise the key steps to making an aeroplane, paper aeroplane. You don't have to write it out. I can just put the number in. So, if you look at that, explain the key features of making a paper aeroplane. Once I've done that, I need to be questioning that that is understood. Then we go on to the next thing. Hopefully this will take 10 minutes. I'm going to stick in a little bit of differentiated learning outcomes, not truly differentiated learning outcomes, but in the assess prior learning, I might have people who are more advanced. So the templates will have more advanced designs, these three: Nakamura lock, swashbuckler or spy plane. I'm also going to provide two lots of paper. One lot is plain, the other lot will have the fold lines. So those people who are less confident can have fold lines that will scaffold them and help them produce that aeroplane. Just going to put the learning outcome in here because it's quite obvious. It is construct a paper aeroplane. Well, there it is. They are going to construct a paper aeroplane. Before they can construct a paper aeroplane, I'm going to use the model approach. That's where I quickly construct an aeroplane so that they can see me doing it, and then they do it. So they will be working as individuals. Now I might change that on the day, and maybe I'll make it a paired activity because I prefer people working together. That really is down to how people felt when you were doing this, assessing the prior learning, and would be me reflecting in action to alter my session. And then there's the activity, what they're going to do. They're going to construct a paper aeroplane. Now then, how am I going to assess that? Well, I'm going to observe, and obviously I'll be able to see whether they've made a paper aeroplane or not. But they will also be able to self-assess themselves because they will see whether they've made a paper aeroplane or not. Obviously, I need my resources for this. So this is the paper. I've already given them the instruction resource, and I've got two types, plain and marked with fold lines. Then I come to this little section, which I'm going to set the learners in a line to prepare for flying. And the whole group are going to throw, launch, fly a paper aeroplane. So now we can see whether they actually flew. Now this is slightly beyond my learning outcomes. And if I had a chance, I would look at, looking at how successful the design was. But in reality, this is, I have made a paper aeroplane. It has worked. It is also a slightly memorable section, which will help. If they're paper aeroplane, they've had a bit of fun throwing it. They all made one. It just reminds them of this key learning outcome up here, the constructing a paper aeroplane. Right. Then we have the plenary. There's the end part, and this is how we finish nearly all sessions. This is going to be tutor-led, so obviously I'm going to be leading this and saying stuff. And what I want to do is revisit the aim and the learning outcomes, because the whole point is how I'm going to assess it. So I have this start and I have the end. Now if I know and I can check the learning outcomes, have we constructed a paper aeroplane? And do you understand the key features of making a paper aeroplane? And ask those questions and check it. Then if those two are achieved, my aim is achieved. And that session has then been a successful session that I have assessed. And if I get time, I'm going to encourage learner questions and feedback. That's the end of this short little clip. I hope to follow it on with another session in the future. Good luck with your planning. Bye.